All right, everyone. I want to I can't say thank you enough. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I have these ideas in my head, and I know this was a little bit last minute, but I want to thank you to the panel who I'm going to introduce, or I'm going to have them introduce themselves because there's no way I'm going to do them justice. Uh, I think it's so, the reason why I titled it Back to the Future is because I want to talk about the people who have come through Illinois Tech because I don't think we talk about them enough. And I don't think we talk about the work and the accomplishments that they have. And I'm doing it during Black History Month because I wanted to focus on our Black alum because I think just if you've seen any kind of presentation from the African American Alumni Association, you would know that some of the people who have come out of IIT have gone on to do incredible things. And I think this group is the same, included in that recognition. So without further ado, I want to go around and have everyone introduce themselves, share whatever you feel like sharing. I think the question asks, what year did you graduate from IIT and what you have your degree in? But if there's anything else you want us to know in your current title, excuse me, let's start there. And so whoever wants to jump in first, you want to start. I can call on people if that's easier. Phyllis, if you want to go first. That's you.
Sure. Phyllis Turner Brim, graduated in 1986 with a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering. Currently, I'm a senior vice president and deputy general counsel at HP Inc. So I also have a law degree from the University of Cincinnati College of Law, which I earned in 1993. And I live in Houston.
Thank you. Sharita, you want to go?
Sure. I have a treatise Caesar, retired recently after about a 16-year career. My last company was Comcast NBCU as a senior vice president of engineering operations, responsible for all the things that you're enjoying right now, deploying video, internet, data services that really helped us during COVID. I graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, BS in 81, and a master's in mechanical engineering in 84.
Thank you. Raymond?
Hey, well, I graduated in 1978 in December with a degree in mechanical engineering with a management minor. I spent a 37-year career with DuPont. I retired in 2016, and I have been consulting ever since. So I currently consult as a partner and also with my own LLC. And I live in Pearland, Texas, which is a suburb on the south, south of Houston, immediately south of Houston.
Jacqueline?
Hey, everybody. I'm Jacqueline Callery. I graduated in 1984. I have a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Management, so that means I keep everybody on task to get things done. That's where I started, and I graduated in 1984. I'm a little unique in the space because I left that to get an MBA and then a doctorate. So my life has taken me from manufacturing, where I started, which is where I am grounded. It's how I think, to advertising at Leo Burnett, to higher ed. So I'm an associate professor at National Louis University, and I'm the program chair for their data analytics program, focusing on business. So I've kind of had an interesting journey, and it goes along with some of the questions you put at the back end, but I am always grounded in who I became at IIT, and it has served Illinois Tech, it has served me well. It has served me very, very well because I think differently. So it's been good.
Thank you. I'm going to get back to you. Bill?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Bill Payne. I'm currently Executive Director of the Polsky Science and Technology Center at the University of Chicago. And Polsky is responsible for innovation and entrepreneurship. And my role is I lead the group that works with faculty members on their science innovations. We develop the intellectual property and market and license the technologies to established companies or faculty startups, depending on the particular technology and concept innovation. So, and I graduated from IIT. I did my PhD work at IIT, and I graduated in 1986 after getting a bachelor's in electrical engineering at Purdue and master's degree in electrical engineering from Georgia Tech. And my PhD was again in electrical engineering. And I spent most of my career in telecommunications. Was chief technology officer in two businesses within Motorola, as well as Nokia. And I started my own company for a while. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda, you want to?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Linda Gibson. I am a pediatric trauma psychologist, and I graduated in 2020 with my master's and PhD from Illinois Tech. And I am also at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign currently as a clinical assistant professor and clinical director for our Psychological Services Center.
Davey?
What's up, y'all? I'm Davey Friday. I am a urban designer. I graduated from Illinois Tech in 2022 with a dual master's of architecture and landscape architecture. I was a biologist before that. That's my undergrad degree from Roosevelt University. I'm also an artist. I paint, draw. Me and Roland are actually collaborators. We've done an exhibition together. Yeah, born and raised in Chicago, third generation from Bronzeville. So I think it's kind of ironic that I actually ended up at Illinois Tech. My dad used to joke, well, he used to say, not joke, you should go to Illinois Tech. You could be an engineer, make X amount of dollars. And I used to tell him I would never go to that school. It's in my backyard. And sure enough, I ended up graduating from there. So it's a funny full circle story.
That is funny. Roland, thank you. Roland?
Yeah, my name is Roland Bolton. Thank you for having me. I'm an artist and architectural designer. I graduated from IIT in the architecture program with a bachelor's of architecture in 2020. Since then, I've worked at Crook Sexton Partners, still in architecture, and Future Firm is where I am now. And yeah, like I think my entire practice is kind of like straddling art and architecture. Like I've exhibited in Southside Community Arts Center, Elmhurst Art Museum, and I'll be showing at the Paul Art Museum later this year. So I think, yeah, practicing both in art and architecture and kind of spanning both of those spaces has been important to me and Davey since IIT. So.
Okay, I am thoroughly impressed with all of you. And so I want to now move on to talking about your time here at Illinois Tech. When you think back on your time, what stands out the most to you? And just jump in whenever you feel like.
Well, I think I'm probably the most recent graduate. I think the thing that jumped out to me, and I don't know what this experience was across different um, areas of study at Illinois Tech, because I know the College of Architecture can be very insular, but the communal aspect of going through the program was really refreshing to me. I hadn't traditionally been a team player until I ended up doing my graduate degree at IIT, and it really opened my eyes to the power of collaboration and how important it is to have peers who are equally or even more so ambitious than you are to kind of make sure that you stay at a pace that is challenging but doable. So being able to just be in that environment with so many different like-minded people spanning the globe, though, was really eye-opening for me. And then to be able to do it in the neighborhood that I grew up in, I never would have thought I would have had that type of experience living in Bronzeville. So that was fantastic for me.
Anyone else?
Well, I
I-
guess I'll jump in. I'm sorry. I think Sharita, why don't you go first?
Thank you, Raymond. And I wanted to just build on, I grew up down the street on 39th and Wentworth, so I can appreciate finding the environment that IIT had after living, so close. And at the first year that I was there, literally walking to school and to this amazing campus that just had just all these thought leaders and, having professors that were actually patent holding invention professors that, were willing to share their knowledge and help us succeed. The environment we had was really unique because at the time we were all product of the early ID program, which was, targeting minorities who had interest in engineering. And we were the largest class of minorities that came on that campus, and seeing people look like me with the desire to experience engineering, and we bonded together and helped each other and supported each other and mentored each other, um, created that team environment that was just spoken about. So it was refreshing to see those that look like me coming onto the IIT campus at that time, and focusing together on a common goal of graduating with this spectacular education, and then being part of that team just made the difference in how I began to think about how you moved in the world. And certainly when you went into the work environment, which I did after my bachelor's degree and then came back for the master's degree, I found it was a similar set of skills and tools that we used together. It was teamwork, it was collaboration, it was taking the best and the brightest ideas to accomplish the goals and execute what we needed to execute. So I wouldn't have had that if I didn't know IIT, no exposure at all to it before early ID. So I credit that program for drawing me in and then having me stick around.
Okay, well, I guess I can go next, and I'm glad I went after Sharita because I can build on some of the things she said. I actually, I probably started before anybody else here on the panel. Started in 1974, and when I started, there weren't that many African Americans on campus. I was actually, and probably the ghost in the room is Dr. Nate Thomas, who was instrumental to the vast majority of us being on this call. And I was actually in his first class at IIT, which started in 1974. And it preceded early ID, but started, I believe, the year after or 2 years after. And one of the things that really stood out was how creative the university allowed Nate to be to get people to want to consider IIT, because I actually was bound to go to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And Nate talked me out of going there by offering a scholarship and also a co-op opportunity, because my whole mindset was I was going to, quote unquote, go away to school. And I didn't want to go to school in the city. And when he offered a co-op opportunity in Texas, actually in Beaumont, Texas, and then a scholarship on top of it, and that made it very compelling. And then later on, when I wanted to be able to graduate in 8 semesters and not have the 5.5 year time span that co-ops normally take, Nate was instrumental again in finding another scholarship with twice the amount that I was currently getting, and being able to work in the summers. And so I was able to graduate in 8 semesters, 4.5 years. That's why I graduated in December of that year, but it was still 8 semesters. But again, it was instrumental in helping me pick which company I was going to go and work for. So just having that mentorship that Nate provided was probably the biggest thing I can say was the thing that helped shape me the most at IIT.
Well, I guess I'll jump in.
Thank you.
What I remember particularly about my time at IIT was really finding a community of Black folks who were doing the thing that I was doing, because I had not had that before. I grew up in Chicago Heights, and I went to Bloom High School, and because of my academic talents, I was tracked in a track where there was one other Black person that I went regularly to high school with in the years that I was there, who was in, the physics, the calculus, and so forth and so on. So I didn't have any community or tribe of folks who were pursuing similar things academically than I was until I got to IIT. And again, Nate talked me. IIT was not on my radar screen. I had a whole different plan. I think I was going to Purdue or Stanford or somewhere like that. And again, lured me in with the old money ploy. Well, we can get you some scholarships. You come here, and so forth and so on, and gave me some of the, even today I cited as the best professional advice that I ever received, and that was to major in engineering, even though I had planned to go to medical school. And as you can tell, I didn't go to medical school, but I've had a great career. And that's largely because Nate said, there's not any jobs for people who, if you graduate from here with pre-med and you don't go to medical school, you'll be one more. Today we would say you'd be one more barista at Starbucks, right? Because there aren't any jobs. And he said, if you do this, you can still go to medical school because you don't have to have particular background, but you can also have a professional career should you choose not to go. And obviously I went a whole different direction eventually in law school, but I just remember that community, and it was a community of folks who were there who welcomed us with open arms, and who we connected with, and then we were expected to do the same. And I found it very, supportive and a very family-like atmosphere. And I do think that was central to my success at IIT, and remains sort of a value I carry forward wherever I am, to try and, if I don't find that community, to build it.
Thank you. That was good.
I think maybe I can piggyback on that because I agree with the sentiment of like kind of IIT expanding possibilities for you between medical school and engineering. I felt like I transferred in from school in New Jersey into third year of architecture school, and I find that like as soon as I arrived, I wasn't only kind of shown what an architectural profession could be, but in a creative standpoint, we were taking film classes and taking furniture classes. And a lot of the people that I was interacting with who have graduated now have become designers, urban designers, or like artists like myself. And so I think IIT ended up opening a lot of potentials and giving you like more avenues than when you arrived. And I think that has played out to like kind of give me much more flexibility, or feel like my skills can translate kind of interdisciplinary into an interdisciplinary practice.
Who wants to go next?
I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting, well, I'll say my time at Illinois Tech, I met my husband. So we'll just start there. It'll be 40 years in August. I'm amazed. So that's my big one. But I did not come the route as everybody in the room. I didn't know about early ID. So I'm not an early ID person. I went to a private school. I'm in Chicago, and I went to a private school in Chicago, and I learned about IIT sitting in one of the big auditoriums, and I was comfortable there because my school only had 52 people in the graduating high school class. So the idea of going to a really big school wasn't something I was going to do. And so that was really it. I didn't have a big plan. I wanted to do biomedical engineering, which they got rid of, and they stuck me in electrical engineering. They stuck Adam in chemical engineering, which is my husband. He kept doing that, but electrical and I didn't like each other. So I actually ended up in the Stewart School. I have a Bachelor of Science because I took enough science and fought for, with Nate's help, a Bachelor of Science degree. And they agreed to it. And I went into the Stewart School, which was better for me. So I still got to do, because I had, by that time, 3 summers in as an engineer, working as an engineer. So I was there. I needed a job. Part of mine was my family life. I had responsibilities. I needed to get in college, get out, and get a job. And that's one why you kind of choose engineering, because you got a good shot at not futzing around trying to find a job. So I was very blessed, and Nate was a blessing for me. I did not know Nate before I came. So I will echo what everybody said about a family and a community. I was welcomed into that community, even though I didn't do early ID. And I don't know how many of y'all actually don't know that, but I didn't do early ID. But it was a welcoming community. The support was off the charts. You asked a question later about alums and people that came before us. We knew we had to support each other and help each other. It was a beautiful model of what college should be and how we should support each other. So I enjoyed my time in the Stewart School. I had built a decent relationship and was able to go back to those same individuals and work in a different space and get certifications. And, I have no idea if Nate made a phone call, because he would make phone calls and you'd never know he'd made a phone call. You'd have no idea he made a phone call. And so that support was a big deal, because you're young, you're not sure, and you're just trying to get by and get through. So it was, again, the biggest one is I left because I got married the year I graduated. And so that was probably, if I don't say that, I will never, it won't be true, because I was meant to be there. And I'm a Chicago person, and I was meant to be there. It felt right for me. And so it wasn't a perfect journey, but I finished and I made lifelong friends there. And you can't, so it means I was supposed to be there. And that's what I have always left with. And that's why I'm sitting here today.
Love that answer. And we are going to come back to the love story, because I love a little love story there. We're going to come back to it. You try to skip over it real quick. No, I heard it. I'm with it. Phil, did you go? Phil, did everyone go?
No, my story is a little different because, I went undergrad to Purdue, and we had a community largely started by Dr. Art Bond and then Marion Blaylock, who unfortunately passed away last year. But we started the Society of Black Engineers, first chapter down there. And so I had that community, but what I also connected with people at IIT during those undergraduate years, because I was on the Bell Labs Engineering Scholarship program. And so I had a number of student colleagues that were there at IIT, and the bus used to stop there that would take us out to Naperville. So Lester McCarroll and Lewis Hurston and Danny Creed and all those folks were part of my universe. Also, I'm an alpha, and so some of the folks there in New Road chapter I know quite a bit, and would socialize during the summers with the parties on campus. So that was kind of my life or contact with IIT, sort of undergraduate wise. And then I went away to get a master's in Atlanta, Georgia Tech, and then came back, and I was working at Bell Labs. And originally I was going to go back to Georgia Tech under a research kind of a research program there for the PhD degree. But some things happened, personally, and I decided to stay here in Chicago, and then decided that, hey, maybe I'll start taking some classes at IIT, and then potentially use those when I decided to move and go back to school full time. But I ended up taking all the coursework, which is essentially another master's, at IIT. And then I was able to work with Bell Labs on a project that, I could, and 2 faculty members, which I'll talk about maybe a little bit later, but 2 faculty members at IIT in order to spec out a project for a dissertation. And, with that, I worked part-time to get the PhD degree. So it wasn't, at that point, it was a different relationship. There's the, knowing people undergrad, and that sort of thing at the, my, original kind of, intersection with IIT, and then, working as a, PhD student. And then I ended up teaching some later too, as well, in the electrical engineering department. But, it feels different for me, than the other stories. I met Nate, and had some time with him, and the feeling that I got was very similar to Marion Blaylock and her way of, cultivating the best out of people, there at Purdue. So a little bit of a different story.
Thank you, Linda.
Yes, I think what kind of stands out to me the most is probably the support and, I would say, mentorship that I received from more senior students in the program. I think there were, throughout the time that I was at IIT in the clinical psych program, maybe 7 Black students there. And so just the sense of community that we formed was really important. Talking with some of the more senior students about other people outside of the psychology department that could provide support. And then also just having their kind of guidance in terms of how to navigate, kind of like issues related to diversity as they would come up throughout coursework, or how to talk with the chair of the department about implementing more programs to support students of color and things like that. So I would say just kind of having the mentorship from more senior graduate students in the program.
Awesome. Did I miss anybody? If I did, let me go ahead and jump in. No. I want to touch briefly on this because his name comes up quite a bit, and I know not everybody had the chance to know him or work with him directly, but I wanted to, for those who did, and you kind of already shared a little bit, can we just talk a little bit about Nate Thomas and what that, because I'm not for sure, I think we all know the importance of having somebody that you could go to and have somebody that can support you, just kind of what Linda was talking about. So for those of you who had the opportunity to work with Nate Thomas, if you don't mind just briefly talking about that time when he was at the university and his God, I can't think of the word, what he did to support students. Anyone? Just
I'll give a couple of examples. I mean, besides the program that Nate put on, he helped really narrow in for me what discipline in engineering I wanted to focus on. I mean, he was at the career fairs with Fred Reeves, if some of you remember him. And, I was considering chemical engineering, but the early ID program gave you exposure to all engineering disciplines. And the one I excelled most at was the mechanical engineering part of it. We were making rockets, we were on NBC News, calculating distance, velocity, and, just having, a great time understanding what each of those disciplines bring. But he was a good counselor as well. My first job opportunity came because Nate facilitated mock, interviews in that summer program before I even started my first year at IIT. And I ended up working at General Electric, Applied Motor Department in DeKalb, Illinois, because we did mock interviews, and it turned out that it was a real job behind it. And it was with Nate's, relationships with these companies that, he was placing students that had no experience yet into these real jobs. And those were significant opportunities. And when, I came to him saying, I really needed to live on campus, he was the one that found scholarships to support me living on campus, even though, I was, 4 blocks away, because I wanted to participate in that community we've been talking about. Nate was a great listener and problem solver for, the Black students that were, on campus. And any issues that came up, he was in the center of it, trying to resolve it, and, bringing his force of nature to help us be the best that we can be. So, I credit Nate with, my entire career and my experience, and, how he came through with, coaching and counseling. A lot of people would just be in his office, just, talking about, what their issues were and struggles, and he would help them work through it, get them tutors, get them mentors, help the Black Student Union. Um, he really was a force of nature.
Every time I hear people talk about Nate Thomas, it makes me jealous that I A, didn't meet this person, and B, wasn't able. I wish I had a mentor like that in my field. In my last year at IIT, I got to work on the design for the Nate Thomas Memorial on 33rd in Michigan. So that was my introduction, Raymond. I think I met you through some of those calls. I think I met a couple of you guys actually through some of those engagements. And just to hear the way people speak about this man makes it feel like he is sitting next to me at all times, and you can just feel the gravity. Like, I wonder, how many Black people did he put in STEM fields in a meaningful way? And is that unrivaled? It's just the way people speak about him. And this is now at this point dozens of people. Um, it's just always phenomenal to hear the effect he's had on not only y'all but me indirectly. Having the opportunity to work with the university and design this garden in his honor, and then be able to work with younger students, teenagers in their ACE mentorship program in the summer. It's like, okay, I have he is the bar. I should aim to be a Nate Thomas for the next generation of students. That's just great to hear. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail.
Don't apologize. We don't
No.
apologize on this panel. You say where you go. We go where you go. Go ahead. Who's gonna talk?
Well, I mean, I will just say that everything, of course, that you've heard about Nate is true. And I think one of at least for me, my experience was that there were ways that he knew and understood me that I didn't know and understand myself at that age. And there were directions that he pushed me in. And I'll just give you one example is that, when I graduated, I had a number of job offers. And we sat down and we went through them. And he said, well, the best one for you just happened to be the one that paid the least. Right. And it paid the least, and it was the furthest away from Chicago. It was in Massachusetts, in which I had never been to Massachusetts, let's put it that way. I had never been east of Ohio, I think, or something like that at that age. And he was absolutely right. I can look back on that and say that was the right place for me. And there aren't many people, I at least my experience, and I think others will say the same, is he had a vision for each of our futures individually that we couldn't have formulated for ourselves.
Oh, if I could build on that, I'm sorry.
No,
Philip,
go ahead.
were you finished?
Go ahead.
No, but I'm so glad that I'm waiting to talk after several of you, because I'm able to build on a lot of the things that are being said. And I'm so glad you brought up the Memorial Meadow, because I was going to put a plug in for it. Anyone that hadn't seen it, please go and drive by 33rd and Wabash and take a look at it. It's still a work in progress, but it's come a long way, and it's got a long way to go. And but I know you're going to continue to work with the team to help make it what it needs to be. But I want to get back to Nate also and tell a couple of personal Nate stories. So when I first met Nate, it was in his office with my parents. And Nate basically called me out for not coming to the meeting that he had at Lindblom. I went to school with Danny Creed, for example, Phil. So Danny and I were classmates. And he said, if you had been in that meeting, I would have gotten you the Bell Lab scholarship. But you weren't there, so but what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you and Tyrone 3, who was another one of my classmates. I'm going to get you a job at the General Motors Electromotive Division as draftsman. So we actually started working before we ever stepped foot on the campus. We actually started the summer before we started at IIT. And so we worked as draftsmen. So I'm there for like, after my first day, I get a phone call from Nate that night. And he says, Ray, you're going to have to lose those platform shoes that you wore to work that day. You know, these were my prom shoes, and they were the best shoes I had. And I just didn't, it just didn't hit me that, this young black man with a big afro, I had a big afro at the time, with platform shoes, did not make the right impression at this place out in the west suburbs. So, Nate called me out and said, no, you're gonna have to go find some other shoes to wear, but don't wear those platforms again. So that's the kind of person Nate was, where he could just be straight up down to earth with you. And as Phyllis said, he would tell you the truth. He, just like Phyllis, he told me I had to go work for DuPont, even though I was strongly considering working for Union Oil, who I had co-op with. But he says, no, I need you to go work for DuPont. Okay. That's what I did. So I spent 37 years with him. So I have some other stories, but I don't want to take up too much air. So I'll pass it on to somebody else. But that's the kind of person Nate was. He was just straight up. He would tell you exactly what you needed to hear. And as Phyllis said, he was always right.
Did anyone else have a story? I don't want to cut anybody off from sharing. Okay. I bring that up because it just seemed like I never met him. I only got to Illinois Tech at 2017, but immediately once I hit campus, his name was just constantly brought up in conversation. So I thank you. And I always enjoy hearing any stories about him and his impact on Illinois Tech. And I'm going to circle back to him.
And I just have to give one more story, because this is more about his community contribute beyond IIT, because he was much bigger than IIT, right? And while I was there, so sometime between 82 and 86, that's when the NCAA had changed its rules for eligibility for athletes, that you had to get a certain score in math on the ACT. It wasn't a high score, but you had to get a certain score. And that particular year, the basketball team at King High School had a number of great prospects on it, and they could not get past that ACT thing. And so Nate drafted me and others to tutor them in math for months at a time, so they could clear that hurdle to get scholarships to go to colleges like all over the country to get athletic scholarships. So, his impact was far beyond IIT and Chicago.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. I want to move on to, we've talked about this a little bit, but I want to kind of build on it. So I'm mixing the questions up. I sent the questions before to everybody, but I'm going to kind of mix them up a little bit. So having that community, having those who were able to know Nate Thomas, and even those who didn't but had mentors and had a strong foundation at Illinois Tech and a strong community. What did that do? What did that happen like after you graduated, after you got your degree? I want to kind of talk about that time period, because I know that's kind of, for some, it's kind of this time of where you don't know where you're going to go and you don't know what you're going to do. Not everybody comes out with a career right away. Those of us who are lucky, not me, those of us who are, is great. But I was one of the ones who were really lost even with my degree, I was lost for a minute. So if you don't mind sharing, I want to talk about that, kind of what your foundation that you got from Illinois Tech, but also in that period of after you graduated, did you know right away what you wanted to do? And where did that take you?
I'll kick that off too, because I keep going back to Nate, but I had that same feeling after getting a bachelor's of science in mechanical engineering. I didn't feel certain at, what I wanted to do out in the world as a career. And as I was coming up to that, I spent some time talking with Nate about it, and he made made me aware of the Graduate Engineering Minority Scholarship, which was the GEM scholarship that would allow you to get a master's degree. And applying for that scholarship and actually getting that scholarship helped me start to make the decisions. I had worked each summer. Nate was instrumental in me working at ITRI, the Research Institute of IIT, as a mechanical technician. I got exposure to engineers, real engineers, who also helped support me, as I was going through applying what I was learning in a working environment. I worked for ITRI for many years, and that transition of getting a bachelor's, going into the world, was I ended up working full time for the first year at ITRI, having lots of different projects, and I couldn't let go of the campus, is what I'm trying to say. I wasn't ready to leave, so I was able to continue to be on campus and support the research projects that ITRI offered until I started to go into the defense area with Northrop, that was out in Palatine, Illinois. But it was having that vulnerability of not knowing, is this mechanical thing really what I want to do? And Nate still offering options. Hey, take the time, apply for this scholarship, make sure you feel confident, with the skills and everything that you got. That council was instrumental in me, just opening my world beyond just, immediately going into one company. I got a chance to practice teamwork, collaboration, working on projects with real engineers even before I left the campus. And that made a difference. And by that time with Northrop, it was growing. I got to be a mechanical engineer there and be part of, some defense contracts, and then ultimately Motorola, and then working in, the commercial sector, and then working with Comcast and Telcom. So it just opened, it wasn't just being a mechanical engineer, it just opened up a world of, projects, critical thinking, being able to do a lot of different things, and leadership that, served me till the day I left, and retired.
Anyone else want to jump in and talk about? Roland, I'm looking at you. What do you got?
Yeah, I think for me, I had a funny transition. I graduated in 2020, and so it's like the middle of COVID. I think the first day I started my job was the day that George Floyd was killed, and so I think all of the heat of that moment kind of materialized in my first days, weeks, kind of my kind of initial experience in the professional environment. And so I think it took some time for me to like take a step back and really evaluate, like, is this the profession, or is this kind of the moment that we're in? And then I think IIT did give me a kind of the skills I needed, or like the experiences to kind of make informed decisions. For instance, while at IIT, we worked on a project called with an initiative called Sweetwater Foundation, which is like a really great program in Bronzeville. But we ended up building all this kind of outdoor furniture to facilitate their programs. And this is me like working in an office where I'm in a 3D model in DC, and I never really get to touch those projects. And so for me, pulling on my experience at IIT, I realized that I really want to be in a space where I could work really close to the projects that I'm doing, and really be able to connect with kind of the communities that I'm working in and trying to serve. And so yeah, I think my first jump into the professional world was kind of like full of turmoil and maybe a question of, is this the right environment? But I think like over time, I kind of feel like even now I'm in the process of figuring out how I would like to practice or hold myself in a kind of future trajectory for my career. So yeah, it's constant learning, it feels like.
That was awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else want to talk about Linda?
I'd like to add that one of the things that was beneficial from the opportunities that Nate provided for me. So I had a chance to work for 3 different companies while I was at IIT. So first it was General Electric, General Motors, the electromotive division. So I worked with locomotives, and I did drafting there. Then I worked for Union Oil at a refinery in Texas, and I had never been out other than being through Indiana and in Michigan. I had never been in any other state in the country, and that was my first time in the South. So imagine a 17-year-old getting on the airplane for the first time, coming to almost like a foreign country, which is what Texas seemed like at the time. And so I had a chance to learn project engineering, which I really enjoyed. And then when I didn't want to continue the co-op, it wasn't because I didn't like project engineering, it's because I just wanted to graduate sooner. And so Nate got me a job and twice a scholarship with Clark Equipment Company, and I did test engineering. And and I was named a quote unquote Clark Scholar. So, I got some prestige behind that I could put on my resume. But I got a fully furnished apartment for free. The only thing I had to pay for was my telephone bill. A nice 2-bedroom apartment right down the street from Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. So I spent 2 summers with Clark Equipment, and I did test engineering. Boring. Hated it. So the thing about that is I learned what I didn't want to do, as well as what I did want to do. So when I went to work for DuPont, started as a project engineer, and I basically hit the ground running because I was very familiar with that from doing a co-op, which was better than summer employment because you actually got a chance to actually do real work as a co-op student, as opposed to just doing things that the engineers would hand off to you because you were only going to be there for a couple of months. I was there for like 4 to 5 months at a time for each of my co-op sessions. So I had a chance to really learn project engineering, and so that really allowed me to get a jump start when I started working. And it was something I was familiar with and something that I knew I liked. But again, I also had the opportunity to learn something I knew I didn't like.
But I want to go to Linda, but then I want to come back to you because you did kind of change. You went to higher education. So I do want to come back. So I'm going to start with Linda, and then I'm going to come back to Jacqueline. That's okay.
Okay, sure. I'm trying to make sure I remember the original question correctly, but just in terms of kind of challenges experienced after graduation.
Yeah.
And what helped. I think for me, I was very fortunate in that I think my advisor was very helpful throughout my time at Illinois Tech in terms of preparing me for things that came after graduation. And I remember when I was applying to different clinical programs, my mentor for undergrad had said, you want to find someone who's committed to your professional development throughout your time in graduate school and then also after you graduate. And so that was one of the things that I looked for and one of the reasons I decided to come to Illinois Tech was because of that specific advisor and previous students saying that beyond the time that you graduated, she continued to provide mentorship and was very helpful. And so leading up to graduation, she was very helpful in terms of talking about all the different things that I would be able to do with the degree, some of the different challenges, preparing me for how to do like contract negotiations for a faculty position and things like that. And so I would say that was pretty helpful and helped me not to experience, I think, as many challenges as some of my friends at other graduate programs, in that my academic advisor was pretty committed to kind of helping to prepare me for what would come after completing my degree.
Thank
What is it you want to ask me?
You're on mute.
Thank you. I was ready to go. I wanted to ask you, was there a point after you graduated that you were kind of like, were you ever nervous? Were you ever like, did you ever like stop and like, what am I doing? Or should I follow this path? How did you stay focused on your goal?
The only part I was nervous about was when I realized I might get kicked out of school and I wasn't going to get back in. And I tell my students all the time, because they always think, well, you have a doctorate. It was not an easy road. I got better at it with every degree. I did not do it perfectly the first degree, but I had too much family in my space. So it cost me something. But at the same time, I ended up where I needed to be and where I was supposed to be. I'm big on God has a journey for you. And sometimes you're going in a direction you're not supposed to go. But I'm gonna go back to Nate, because people were talking about their job journeys. Every one of my jobs, every one of my summer jobs, including my final job out of college, was on Nate's board. That's all I'm gonna say. Every job I got was on Nate's. Nate had a board and he had the jobs and they were listed on that board, every job. So when I left IIT, I was ready. I was comfortable in manufacturing spaces. I was comfortable being the only woman in the room. Right. So when I got my first job and I walked into the manufacturing engineering space at General Motors in Flint, I had already traveled to New York to work for Xerox for 2 summers. So I'd gone out of my comfort zone, because remember I told you I went to IIT because I wasn't ready for the big thing. So I was ready. And, Nate, I had to learn how to do it on my own and make it through. And I'm going to say Nate knew that. So the opportunities I had, I grew there. And so when I went into my first job, I was ready for that job. I was prepared, be it with conversations with many people in this room, people that went before me, the support we had with our Black student group, Black Student Union, I think it was called, all of that. I was ready. And I was good there. I don't know if I'm answering your question, and I always want to make sure.
No, you are. No, please.
Yeah. So, life is very introspective when you look back and you don't remember everything perfectly, right? But I was prepared academically. I was prepared to believe I could be at the table, because let me tell you, I was the only woman in that space. There were 10 people in my office, and every time they walked in, they thought I was a secretary. So I went to the shop and I had them build me a bookcase, so they would stop asking me every time they came through the door. And I didn't get those questions anymore. I made them build me a bookcase, because I don't know where so-and-so is. That's not my job. So I would say I was prepared because of the opportunities I got at IIT. They don't do it as much anymore. They don't let students work their first and second summers. A lot of times they can't work until their third year. After their third year. But because of that, I understood, and this is the educator to me, I understood the classes and why I was taking particular classes, how they applied, how they were used. That is the value of co-op. That is the value of summer jobs. They're extremely important. So all of that, prepared me for that first full time. I'll tell you that, as I said before, I have became a very good practitioner. Focus. There's something about being a practitioner. You look at things differently, you reflect, you process, you reapply. Those are the skills I built at IIT. Even before an MBA, and just practicalities. My MBA was torture for me because they wanted me to write a certain way. And, and I'm like, really? But most importantly, they just made up stuff. And I came from a space where it was practical and I could prove it, right? And I could prove the case, right? And so that was a transition for me. But yeah, prepared, very prepared. And a lot of it came from the world most of us sat in, where we got internships, co-op, all that stuff. Yeah. That's all I could tell you. I was
I
very prepared.
Bill, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you are the only one that has gotten your PhD from Illinois Tech. Is that correct? Before I say that, is that, I believe so.
You mean
You have your
as far as
PhD.
African American? Yes, I did. Yes.
No, just on this panel. You have your PhD.
On this panel, I'm
Yeah.
not sure. Yeah, I don't think so based on the their introductions, but yes.
So can you talk about
Hmm.
kind of the same question to you, kind of how you felt prepared after you graduated with your PhD, kind of what choices, where your career took you from there?
Yeah, thank you. So I had wanted to move down a path of advanced technology, more research, focused in my career. And so when I came back from Georgia Tech, again, I was considering going back full time to get a PhD, but then decided to try to do something more locally here. And what I was in what's called an advanced technology group in Bell Labs. We were focused on something called optical switching, if you will, hardware oriented. And then after doing my coursework at IIT, I started reaching out to faculty members to see about, I wanted to get into the software side or algorithmic side of it, of designing networks, if you will, based on these devices. So I actually ended up with two advisors, one in electrical engineering and one in computer science, in order to sort of fill that, the gap of what I really needed. So I ended up going through a couple of defending my thesis on the computer science side as well as electrical engineering side. Point being that that helped me to kickstart my career on the advanced technology. I eventually became a chief technology officer within Motorola business on Motorola Networks, which was our wireless business. I was a chief technology officer within Nokia. And so it was that, kind of research proving that I could do, high-end research in a telecommunications field that both gave me the confidence, to be able to move forward and, compete, within my setting and advance, relative to others. And that came from, being able to kind of have the kind of PhD work that I did with IIT, and having it again across my degree is in electrical engineering, but I had also commitment in a lot of advisor time from computer science as well. So that's sort of what I gained out of it, the experience, and it was probably 5 or 6 years of my time at IIT, and I sort of never looked back after that point. Moved on to Motorola, spent time in what's called cable data, internet over cable, that we all kind of use now, and then moved into wireless for the bulk of my career, and LTE, long-term evolution, et cetera.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go to the next question, but I don't want to skip anybody. If anybody else has any other thoughts that they want to share.
Yeah, just real quickly, I just wanted to
Yeah,
say,
real quick.
when I graduated in 2022, Roland actually helped me a lot while going through that last year. I mean, that summer after graduation, because after my biology undergrad degree, I didn't do anything right during that degree. I didn't do the things where you network or find a mentor or try to get an internship. I just thought that I'll submit an application and get a job and that would be that. That wasn't the case at all. So me even going to grad school was about a second opportunity to network through an institution and learn more skills. I got into IT for my master's biology and pivoted to architecture at the last second, but I'll say that story. But me and Roland overlapped. I started in 2018. He was almost done with. I think that's when he started too, but he was about to be done with his program in 2 years. I had a 4 year program doing a dual master's degree. So my halfway point was when he was done. So he had a couple years of experience and also has started to really invest in his art practice. So as I'm getting ready to graduate, Roland taps me and says, "Yo, there's an opportunity for us to do a dual exhibition at this gallery. Do you want to create? Do you want to make a submission, basically?" And so we spent several weeks working on our application. We get appointed the gallery, and then we spend basically close to a year setting that up. And so as I'm graduating, it's almost halfway to the show. So even though for a brief stint, I was kind of figuring out where I was going to work, I was still working on my personal professional practice as an artist. We did a show in Crown Hall in August before our gallery exhibition, kind of talking about, and it was actually a reflection almost for me on my time at IIT. We were kind of grappling between um, Mies van der Rohe and Crown Hall and Mecca Flats, the building that sat there previous, and just also trying to understand. We benefited greatly from IIT. All of us did, it sounds like. But there was a thriving Black community that IIT basically landed like a spaceship on, and had some negative reverberating effects. So how do you wrestle that as an individual? And I'm from Bronzeville as well. Like, yeah, I'm one of the few who got to benefit from this project, but so many people have the exact opposite. And the Mecca Flats Crown Hall contention was really speaking on that. So after graduating, I really got to think about my work the past 4 years with a great friend of mine that I met in that building, another Black artist designer in lineage with me, and him being earlier in his career, having a little more experience. I got to just kind of watch his footsteps, and we're spitballing back and forth. So by the time I start at the company that I work for now, the gallery show was 2 months after. And so to I got to almost distract myself from the pressures of finding a job. And it ended up working out well because I did the internship things and network with my professors in a way that I was supposed to now, my master's degree that kind of set up the place so I could work at the firm that I am now. But I also got to dive deep into my art practice after school. And it kind of speaks back to what Roland talked about earlier, is about how IIT showed us that flexibility of the skills that we were gaining because we used all of our time as architectural students studying in Crown Hall, took all of that history and transformed it into a art practice that was well received. We got a couple publications. We were in a Chicago Times. We were in Architecture Magazine. We had a great reception, and that was a very good experience graduating, feeling like I'm succeeding on two fronts. I am um, practicing as an artist like I want to, and I also have a job at a firm in the profession that I went and got a degree in. So it was a great time afterwards.
You brought up something. I'm going off these questions, you guys. I'm going to go sidetrack a little bit. But you brought up something that I want to kind of touch on a little bit. We always do, like before our new faculty orientation, we do kind of a history of Illinois Tech. And one of the things that they touch on is about Bronzeville, the area before Illinois Tech, as you put it, landed there. And it was thriving. They talked about the jazz community. They talked about some of the artists that came through and lived there for a short period of time. And I know when I arrived here at Illinois Tech, there were questions about, I know that there's still struggle with this, how to bring back that relationship, how to have that community. But like you said, there's that kind of that history that doesn't sit so well. So if anyone feels like talking about their time here in Bronzeville, I know some of you said you lived really close and you are from Bronzeville, but how does that what does that relationship look like? What is the, you know, I just, I guess what I'm trying to say is that because we sit right here, and because I know when I drive into work, I see all these high schools, it just feels like there's like a disconnect. It doesn't feel like we should be like more like other college towns, or where there's colleges in these. It doesn't feel like a community yet. But I just wanted to know, did it ever feel like that for any of you when you were attending?
Well, let me go first, if you don't mind, because my experience was maybe a little different because this was the 70s. And so the perception was all the neighborhoods around the school were dangerous. And we didn't go into Bridgeport at all, period. Black people did not go into Bridgeport. And the white people at the school only went to Bridgeport, or they got on the L and they went somewhere else, but they never went into Brownsville. That was the reality when I was there in the 70s. So the school was like an island, and very different than Rice University here in Houston, where I've spent a lot of time. And Rice is in the middle of the city. It's got a big wall around it, but it's open to the surrounding area, and it's very engaging. You know, a lot of people go onto the campus, things like that. So that's what's so nice about the work that Davey has done with the Nate Thomas Memorial Medal. In fact, I brought this up at the alumni board meeting last Friday. I'm on the alumni board, and one of the things that I brought up was the intention of the medal was to help to serve as an interface with the community. So he understood my point. I also mentioned that that landscape architecture is a field that is not well known, and is underappreciated. So hopefully he took that point as well. But I'm saying all that to say that that there are some things that can be done to help improve that relationship between the school and the surrounding community, because the history is that even before I was there, they actually didn't want Black people on campus. There was a time that Blacks weren't allowed to be in the school. There was a time that women weren't allowed in the school. And so those are the things that the current administration, fortunately, is looking to address. But there are some things like the Nate Thomas Memorial Medal that can help serve as a small step toward building some of these relationships to the community.
And just to piggyback off that with a real quick point about your point on landscape architecture, IIT is actually an arboretum. It has been given a classification of an arboretum, a tree museum, basically, which not many people know about, but that's an opportunity for Bronzevilleans to interface with the community. I drive out to Morton Arboretum, because I think it's a beautiful, fantastic place to spend some time in nature. And we have that in Bronzeville on campus, which I think is fantastic.
There still is that, because I've heard stories about students being told don't go past a certain
35th Street.
Yeah, when I went in grad school, my first orientation, it was the public safety people got up in front of 4,000 students, people from all over the world, and said these words specifically: the city is north of 35th Street. There is nothing for you south of 35th Street.
35th Street.
And I had to get up in front of 4,000 people that I did not know and say, I'm sure that they're well intentioned, but I live south of 35th Street. I live right up the block. Hyde Park's up here. We have the Stony Island Art Bank, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's a real challenge that we have still. It's still a disconnect about what's going on in the rest of the city.
Yeah, I can piggyback off of that. I think that we were told, and I was from the suburbs at that point, so I didn't know. So you're told that there was danger outside of that perimeter. So 29th Street to the north, right? And 35th Street to the south. And I won't say it was like, you know, sweetness and light or anything like that, but it wasn't nearly, at least in my view, as scary as it was purported to be. You know, part of that is because those are our people, right? I mean, let's just be real.
Yeah.
Those are our people. And, you know, I had family that lived in the Robert Taylor homes. I had family, you know, all in that space. And so to say that somehow, you know, this is a place you don't go, I mean, you use your judgment like you should in any case, but, you know, I think that that's one reason that community was so important because one place a lot of us, you know, we again speaking from our own experience, is that it wasn't like the white community on campus was open in its arms and embracing us as folks who were there. They had the same stereotypes and things in their mind about what we could achieve and how did you get in here and you only got here because you were Black and you blah 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 blah. And that was an attitude there. So we needed our community because it's not as if somehow we were being welcomed in and weren't looked upon as somehow, you know, this affirmative action has put these people here who are unqualified, incapable, and won't succeed in this environment. And so part of our job was to absolutely prove that wrong.
I want to ask that I want to piggyback on what you just said because it seems I'm worried, I'm concerned about the image of the current African or Black student. And it seems like you kind of had some of the same kind of stereotypes now. Some things I hear is that, you know, they work all the time, so they're not going to do other activities, or, you know, they don't have the resources as other their counter parts may have. How do we get away from those stereotypes? How do we, and I know support is important for that. I know having our own cohort, having students that look like us are important. But I also know us as a people. And if we feel like in a space where we don't feel like people don't believe in us or don't see our potential, we will leave. We won't stay anywhere. I think we've just we don't stay where we're not welcome because we know what we're bringing to the community. We know our potential. So I sometimes worry about some of the comments where, oh, they're here on the scholarship, or oh, they're here on this. When I hear you all mention scholarships, you talk about it so proudly, but it feels like now it has a negative connotation to it. Like, oh, you're on a scholarship. But the way you talk about Nate got me this scholarship. So now I was able to do this. I want to talk a little bit about, because I think there's, you know, if you look at the enrollment for Illinois Tech, it's down for African Americans or Black students. It's continuously, if you've ever seen Lewis Hurston's report, it has continuously gone down since Nate Thomas left. So I kind of want to just ask the question, one, how do you overcome those stereotypes? And two, you know, we don't have, you know, just hearing about Nate Thomas and his contributions, like, is that missing? Do we need that? And whoever wants to jump
Yeah,
in.
let me yeah, and again, I'm trying to be sensitive of talking too much, but I just wanted to bring up something that Lester McCarroll has brought up, and I'm really trying to push this because to me, I think it's a game changer, and it's changing the paradigm from the word underserved to untapped. And as much as we can get rid of this victim mentality, or you know, oh, those folks are only there because you know they're affirmative action babies, and you know,
tap resource.
Yeah, I mean, just personally, when I started the program, I was the only Black graduate student, which was crazy to me to be in what at one point was the literal blackest place in the world outside of Africa. To be the only Black student there was a little jarring, but understanding the role Nate played in attracting Black students and then losing that and not having somebody to replace that energy probably does have a negative effect. And I think as time has gone on, I think like a lot of my peers have devalued the degree. It's way more expensive to get one, and they're being afforded way less opportunities with one now. So I think people have just been of my generation trying to circumnavigate degrees as much as possible. Like I have a bunch of creative friends, and I know about five who have high, well-paying jobs and no degree because they just focused on doing the work independently, which is also very tough. And that's not a model that can be sustained across everybody. You have to be a particular kind of person to go through that. And I am by no means, I was not an exceptional biologist, probably not an exceptional architecture student either. I'm just loud and talk a lot. And I think we have to find ways to make people who don't talk so much or aren't as comfortable just putting themselves out there, we got to afford the space for them to still be comfortable in an environment that may not seem so welcoming. I like to think, like I convinced one of my Black friends to go to the College of Architecture, and he's about to graduate now. So I'm hoping that we, me, Roland, and my other peers who graduated at that time can start to advocate for our field and advocate for the school as well, because it was a great time. But I think that image has to be portrayed. Like De La Salle, Phillips, Hales, so many schools, high schools in the area. I feel like it's a missing opportunity that IIT is not directly building a pipeline to get those high schoolers right into the university. I think that's like a fantastic opportunity to, like you said, Ray, get some of that untapped potential.
Yeah, I think it's a hard question. Like I think for me, what's most damaging is this kind of narrative of IIT, and I think maybe where the potential is, or maybe is rooted in the work that Davey and I were trying to do. Like for me, I'm coming in from as an outsider to this place and trying to wrap my head around it. But the way the school is designed, it obviously is, as you described it, Raymond, like between kind of like a racial line, and it was like that by design, right? Like this campus was designed kind of to be a siloed bubble, And, I think it was until my second year in IIT when I kind of looked into the history of this place, right? Like until I finally understood that where we're standing when we're in Crown Hall is actually like a building called the Mecca, where, it housed kind of one of these like the most beautiful or the first instances of like the courthouse building. Or was like something that was made in the Columbian Exposition, or that the State Street was called the State Street Stroll because it was just kind of like a mecca of jazz music. And I think a lot of students at IIT right now are walking around, Black students who don't know that history at all, and they just kind of understand it as the current condition. And for me, when I understood where I was standing, it was actually incredibly empowering for me. And I think um, yeah, I think a lot of the work is like the second you get to IIT, you should learn its entire history. We're taught in architecture school, like the plan of the kind of uh, this alien campus dropping on this neighborhood. Like we're taught to like valorize that. That's like the genius of Mies van der Rohe. But I think complicating that history, telling these alternate stories, will give the people who identify with Bronzeville, with this other narrative, only adds more to that story and empowers that other voice. And I think even inversely, I think it only better, more interestingly complicates Crown Hall and IIT's narrative. Like Davey and I always say, like Crown Hall is a great building. We met there. We love this building. We love this institution. But you know, this history actually makes it more interesting. Crown Hall is even more so my favorite building because I know its history. It's not, I think, a thing we should be hiding. And so, um, yeah, I think the narrative of the place is actually more interesting than we're saying.
May I ask a question? Just curious.
Yeah.
Why did you stay in the city to go to school? I'm just curious. Roland, I know Dad, I'm not remembering degrees and timeline, but why did you stay in the city? There's so many parents that are
Mhm.
focused on sending their children out of Chicago. We have our challenges in the city right now. Um, but why did you stay?
Yeah, for me, I graduated high school at 17, and it was like a really simple choice for me. I could be poor by myself in another city, or I could be poor in the city of Chicago with 200 family members, hundreds of friends, a place that I'm familiar with. I don't have to figure things out. I can learn how to be an adult without learning how to take care of myself completely. So for me, it was just, and after studying architecture, I'm glad I did because I can argue that Chicago is the greatest city in the world. Like I think I can put together a concise argument that even if you disagree, you can hear where I'm coming from. And so luckily I had that inclination at 17 to just stay put because I know what some of my older friends how they struggled and how they had to come home because they got into a little trouble out there that they couldn't figure out. So for me, it was just this is a great city. I have a great network. You hear all the terrible things, but I used to take the 63rd Street bus every day during the height of the drill era, like when that started to really pick up in the early 2010. So if I can survive that for 4 years, going up the street on 35th, even when I went to school downtown, going downtown was nothing, and then going to IIT was even better because it's closer to home. I love the city of Chicago. I really think it's a fantastic world-class city, and I wish more people knew of all of the beauty and the history of the city more so than the really concentrated violence that is way overreported.
Yeah.
Very real, don't get me wrong, but you know,
Thank you for that. No, I mean, that was always a selling point at one of my institutions. Why not go to school in Chicago?
right.
I mean, seriously. But yeah, so thank you for that. I appreciate that.
100%.
I want to ask one more question because I think this is important, and I kind of would hope my work here, my time at Illinois Tech will produce something out of this. But my question is, do you think we celebrate and talk about the alumni, the Black African American alumni that have come before us? And do you know all of them? Like, have you seen, like, I know those of you who are part of the African American Alumni Association see the report, and sometimes I put on a presentation about it. But the people who have come out of Illinois Tech and what they have gone on to accomplish, do I don't feel like because I'm always surprised when I hear it again. Every time I hear it, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. They did what? What? Who? I don't feel like we do enough to celebrate or talk about that. And I think that would play a role in students, Black, African American, all students really, success if you know who have walked through this campus as well.
Yeah, I know it's done sometimes, and I think that sometimes people feel like if it's done once, it's done enough, and you got to kind of keep telling the story over and over again. At my time at IIT, they introduced us to two Black architects that graduated in a meaningful way. A man named John Matusami, who famously designed the AKA headquarters in the Lawless Gardens and a couple other projects in the city, and then a man named David Sharp, who was really instrumental in the design of tall buildings in Chicago as well. They had two exhibitions for him. A talk for John Matusmi that was really long and engaging. It was like an hour. It was very fun. And then the David Sharp, they just had an exhibition of his in Crown Hall for a couple days, showing his work as a student, his work as a professional, and some of his pictures and history. But I think that can be repeated more and more and more. I haven't heard anybody talk about Virgil Abloh on campus. And he died now 2 years ago, and then there hasn't been uh, like a memorial for him, a celebration. I haven't heard a mention of him, and he was quite literally maybe the greatest Black fashion designer on the planet during his time being alive, and is a graduate of IIT. and came back to IIT while me and Roland were there doing photo shoots and stuff. So I think we could be way better at proliferating the marriage. Even if we do tell the story once or twice, we have to have a record or an archive or a platform or a program where it can be constantly shared so people can constantly know the people that we've had come in and out of IIT. I didn't know the cell phone was invented by IIT alumni. Well, the woman who found the hole in the ozone layer was from IIT. It's like so many fantastic things coming out of our university that people just don't know about. And we don't do a good job. That's like a fantastic selling point, if you ask me.
I agree. I agree.
Well, stay tuned because April Welch is leading an effort we currently are calling the Lab Project, which will, the intention is to highlight the accomplishments of many of our predecessors. Let me ask two questions. And Bill, you probably know the answer to the first, but how many of you know Dr.
Wait, you went out there. Can you say that again?
Out. You've been going in and out.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Right. Yeah, you went out. Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's my speaker, my Bluetooth connection. So I asked, how many of you have heard of Dr. Mark Hanna and know what his accomplishments are? And I'm sure Bill knows, and if nobody else knows, Bill, maybe you can step in and tell the rest of the folks here.
Yeah. So Mark Hanna was a Bell Lab scholar as well, IIT graduate, and he started the company Silicon Graphics. Was one of the founders, and that company became kind of a big player in the kind of the graphics computing industry, kind of before NVIDIA, which is one of the big players now. I believe it got bought by MIPS. I'm not sure, but I haven't kept track of, Mark, after that, but yeah, that was a pretty awesome accomplishment,
much of the CGI that we experience now were the result of several of Mark's patents. And Mark got his BS in electrical engineering at IIT and got his master's and PhD from Stanford. And Bill, he's currently he's currently with NVIDIA. He's doing some work.
He is.
NVIDIA.
Okay, I didn't know that, but I would guess that all the GRUs come, or the graphics units come from NVIDIA. So right. That's the right place for him to be.
Absolutely. And then my second question, and so that's the point. A lot of people don't know. And Mark's a trustee at the university, but there's a lot more that can be done to your point, Tavi, make more people aware of his accomplishments. So my second question is another doctor, Dr. Georges Benjamin. How many of you have heard of him? Okay, well, Georges was actually featured in IIT's magazine newsletter last month. He and Harold Mays, who is the head of the lottery there in Illinois, were both featured in the IIT newsletter. So that actually comes back on us, if you think about it, where the university is making an effort to promote, the accomplishments of our predecessors, and it's up to us to be aware of these things and and communicate them. So so we can't put it all on the university. We have to take some responsibility ourselves too.
So I want to ask, and I'm opening it up to the group. We have a little less than 30 minutes left, and thank you all for staying. 2 hours is a lot. So I realize that as I advertise that, I'm like, that's a long time. Everybody's sitting. It's time to start scooching in their chairs. I understand. But I understand that you all are dropping some gems. And before we go, I'm going to ask you for just advice, your biggest advice you want to give everybody. So, but I wanted to ask, just kind of what are some takeaways, not only at your time at IIT, but also in your career? And this kind of could be the advice question as well, but what are some of the takeaways that you have kind of seen in your career that you kind of reflect on and be like, okay, yeah, that's something I've learned. It was a hard lesson, but this is something I've learned, and I think it's helped me as I move forward. Does that make sense?
For me, it's to be collaborative and to be iterative. You can, if you want to go fast, somebody, I can't remember who made this quote, but if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, you got to go with people. And I'm really starting to understand how important it is to trust in other people's skills and trust in other people's expertise, and ask for help, because it can get you much further. And then to be iterative is to do things and then do things again. And when you get them well, do it some more, because that practice, that trial and error, can birth some really, really dope things.
Yeah,
I would,
I'll,
for
I'll
me,
piggyback.
oh,
Sorry, please go ahead.
oh, I would just say, I think the lessons of resiliency, being resilient and being persistent, if you learn that early, it's better to learn it early. And when you have a setback, like, I had setbacks at IIT. I mean, the worst grades I ever got in my entire academic career, I got the first semester I was at IIT. And to be willing to reach out for help, and B, recognizing that that's not a referendum on who you are as a person, right? And knowing that you can come back from that, because I wound up graduating with honors. So I went all the way from, very mediocre first semester to really excelling by the time I was graduating from IIT. And that had a lot to do with, the community, the collective success, the collaborative success, but also, having folks there who believed that you could do it and that you belong there. And I don't know if students today hear that enough, that you're here, you belong where you are. And nobody's doing you a bunch of favors or anything like that, that you've earned your seat there and you can succeed in that environment. It's not going to be easy and it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be ugly. It's not going to be easy, but you can do it.
I'll add really quickly. I think one thing for me, I think in my experience as a graduate student in higher education and now as a faculty member, I think is the importance of like self-care and also knowing your self-worth. I think as a graduate student, you experience a lot of isolation, and I think it is very similar experiences as a faculty person. So kind of the importance of uh, self-care, being mindful of your own well-being, not as the only Black person, Black graduate student, Black faculty member taking on the responsibility of representing your community, speaking up on behalf of your community. And then I think as a faculty member, not taking on the responsibility of leading all DEI efforts within your department or something like that. So just being very mindful of that and the isolation that comes with being in these spaces sometimes within higher education. And so making sure you're constantly, I think, seeking out that support and network if it's not within your own department or something.
I guess I'd like to add, for me, probably the biggest thing was learning how to learn and learning how to learn quickly. And that's one of the things that really helped me in my career. I had the opportunity to work in a lot of different areas, and actually I did the work of what most chemical engineers did in DuPont in operations. And then I segued into Lean Six Sigma, where I'm a master black belt. And that's the kind of consulting that I do around continuous improvement. And learning how to learn and learning how to learn quickly were some of the things I learned from some of the classes that I took there. And then also the importance of understanding finance. Phyllis and I have talked about this before, where one of our favorite classes there at IIT was engineering economics. Really enjoyed that class, and really it did a lot to help me in my career, to be able to make decisions between alternatives, things like that. Oh, also, I wanted to put a plug in. Somebody else that many of you don't know and should know is Andrea Berry. I don't know how many of you have heard of her. And she actually has five. Yeah, she actually has, I believe, 5 Emmy Awards from her career at Fox Sports.
Thank you. Real quick, I'm gonna just throw a curveball. Oh, go ahead, please. Sorry, go ahead.
Because I know what is it now? We say people who identify as female. I have to get used to these terminology sometimes. I want to say it right and be respectful. And I'll just say this: you got to ask for the money. Women need to ask for the money. Women don't ask for the money, and we are perpetually underpaid. I'm going to say that. Black people need to ask for the money too. So in general, we are underpaid. I'm going to say reach before you're ready. We always try to be, as people of color, we will wait until we have everything in the job description on our resume before we apply for something. Just apply. You probably
I needed that one. I needed that one. That was
just apply. But we'll wait until we have everything in the job description, and it's just there. But reach before you're ready. Be open to possibilities. I'm going to reinforce what everybody said. Failure is an option. You can't go through the cycles, and you don't grow unless you fail. It is an option. Don't be afraid of it. Lean into it and learn from it, which means you have to be open to feedback, which is sometimes harsh. It feels harsh, especially for the generations behind me. I have a 24-year-old and I can never get my words right. He thinks I'm the meanest thing since sliced bread, but look, I'm like, come on, I'm trying to move you forward. It for some reason, it feels like I'm complaining. I'm like, it's just feedback. Critique is not criticism. Those are two different words. Critique is not criticism. So, and the only thing I would tell you, because if you listen to my career, I've ended up in a whole nother space. It's my golden thread. I'm an educator. And when I look back across all the jobs I've done, I've always stood in a space where I'm training, facilitated training, teaching, and I call it curating teachable moments. That's what I love doing, no matter where I am. And so even at General Motors, I ended up training people on my job. So it's always been my golden thread. And when you find your golden thread, that's happiness. And no matter how hard you have to work, it's still happiness. So I hope everybody's found theirs, but that's it. But remember, especially for the women get underpaid, you have to ask for your money. And my best example is I finally asked for the title I wanted for the faculty thing. I'd earned the right to be an associate professor, and I asked for it and I got it, just to discover a lot of people in my university aren't associate professors. So it put me in this light that I wasn't ready for. And they've actually had to rewrite the entire faculty policy because people wanted to figure out why. Well, I had 20 years of experience and I don't look it. I'd already had almost 25 years of experience. So I earned the right to be an associate professor, but I had to ask for it. Don't let anybody tell you you don't deserve something, but ask for it. All they can do is say no. All of my promotions came from asking for them. You get a no. Okay, move on. That's all I have to say.
I want to ask you a question though, before we go to someone else, because I was at another, another presentation I did, and a Black student was sharing his frustration about the lack of people that looked like him on campus. And one of the things he said is like, I thought I would find my wife here. And yeah, so now I'm picking on you. He thought, and he's like, there's not enough people here that look like me. And he was really hurt. And he was very passionate about it. So I wanted to talk to you if you could briefly share what that was
And
like.
you're going to turn the recording off. I did not go to college to find a husband. That's all I'm
I
going to tell you.
know nobody said that, but it happened. So let's talk about it. What was it like?
I did not go to college. He's my best friend. He's my best friend in the
You
whole
met
wide
him on
world.
campus, right? You met him at IIT.
I did. Yes, I did. I met him here, but I did not date him first. He's my best friend.
He's your best friend. Okay.
Right. And that's who God said I'm supposed to be with. I did not go to college to find a husband. I need to go on the record for that, record it, but I did find one. He's my
but you married him before you graduated, correct? From IIT? No. No, you after.
no. Mm-mm.
Oh,
No. 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 I finished school first and then I got married.
okay, but you guys remained, you dated friends all the way through your time at Illinois Tech, right?
But I did not go out with him originally. I need to go on the
Okay,
record.
you had the love story. Come on, it was a love
There is
story.
I don't know what you want. I don't know what you want. It worked out. It worked out.
And it's 40 years. You've been married? Did you say 40?
We got married in 1984. It worked out. It's a journey. Let's not kid ourselves. And he couldn't get on. He tried to get on. His phone didn't work. He's in North Carolina right now. It's a journey. It's a journey and it takes work. Some people, anybody else married in here, it takes work. Don't kid yourself. It takes absolute work. We are totally different people than we were at 23.
My first cousin married. The two of them went to IIT. Courtney Ashford, now Thomas Ashford. I don't know if you guys knew him, but they've been married, forever. But they met though, Ray. I think at Lindblom, they knew each other, and then continued dating at IIT.
And it was actually a small world. We actually have family that know. It's the world. Our world is really small, for the record. So that's all you're getting out of me. Yes, I did meet him at IIT. He was actually, okay, what other story can I tell you? He was what did they call those
people? I was trying to help you, Jacqueline.
He was the door person in women's dorm. So, we both had work study jobs. I paid for school with work study and my summer internship. That's when it was affordable. That's and a small loan. That's when it was affordable. This is a whole different conversation now. But yeah, he's my best friend. He's my best friend.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put Roland on blast because I rarely cry in public, but the last time I cried in public was at his wedding. And he married an IIT student as well.
It's recently married, but I agree already with what you said. It's a lot of work, but we're ready. Yeah.
Communication. Don't stop talking. That's all I'm gonna tell you. Don't stop talking.
Wait, were you in the same class or same?
Architecture school, graduated 2020.
That's beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
And you should also look up Anina and Anthony Matoyer, who are an IIT couple.
Yeah, it happens.
And they both work for Boeing. In Seattle.
There we go. Shout out to Seattle. My last question, and then if anybody else wants to jump in and ask anything, please do, or if we end early. What is the state of higher education right now? In your opinion, what do you think? Do people see the value of it? I mean, I know at Illinois Tech, we don't have a Nate Thomas anymore, and you can see what happens when you don't. Those numbers are clearly in decline since the moment he left. Where is the state now, and especially with Black African American students? Go ahead, awesome.
I think there are very few degrees that are still worth it. The money that you spend to acquire it versus the money you are going to earn having it, there are very few degrees that justify it. Architecture is not one of them. I love that architecture has trained me to be a better designer and artist. So if I'm going to make my money, it's going to be on my own terms, not in the field, I don't think. But I think things like engineering is still very valuable to have a degree in. A lot of other STEM fields are still very valuable. Data scientists, things of that nature, computer science. But I think a lot of degrees are just not worth the money that you have to spend. So many people have been in debt for now 20, 30 years, paying on time and haven't even covered their just the interest on their loans, and it's handcuffing a lot of people financially. And I see a lot of my peers trying to avoid that by all means possible. I took on a lot of debt, not because I thought that architecture was going to make me a lot of money, but it was going to train me in a way that my own skills, my ability to draw, my ability to visualize could probably make me some money. So I'm not, but a lot of people go to college with the idea that I'm going to get a job that can afford me the life that I want. And I think that as becoming a smaller reality for fewer and fewer people. And I think that this is a very important time where we have to get the cost of college under control, so people don't try to abandon the idea altogether. Because I think a lot of teenagers still need the structure of going to college in their early 20s to really become functioning adults. A lot of people grow in an extreme way that you just don't have that opportunity to if you don't go to school. And there also aren't many job opportunities that you can have without going to college. So if you don't go to college, you can put yourself in a very precarious situation if you're not savvy with the way you navigate. So I'm really worried about the future of our country if we stop being dedicated in training the next generation in those critical 4 years after you turn 17 or 18.
So I think that I think it's absolutely still worth it to go to college. And I would advise particularly any Black person in this country, go to college. But I would also say exercise some discernment as you go on that journey. Because I used to routinely, one of my many things that I do is I'll if people have children or whatever who want to go to law school, I'll have them come and spend the day with me because, of course, I've been to law school and see what I really do, which is not all that exciting for the most part. And, they always want parting words. And my parting words are, do not go into debt to go to school. Figure out a way, because you will become a slave to the debt. The debt will determine your choices. Like, you won't be able to work for legal aid because you have to make whatever money at this big law firm to service the debt. But part of that is exercising discernment. Like, if you want to be a social worker, why would you go to University of Chicago and pay all that money to get a degree in social work? Right? That doesn't make sense. And I think parents want to do, like, I want the best for my children, right? And they want to, and children have dreams, but we also have to guide them and help them and say, gosh, if you really want to be able to go to the Peace Corps or do these other things, there's a way you can go to college, but it's not going to be my daughter went to Loyola Marymount, and you don't hit that campus for less than $60,000 a year. Right. And so we have to I do not like this talk that college is not worth it. And the reason I don't like that talk is because I've been in corporate America for 36 years. And what I know is college degrees are table stakes for getting a conversation about whether you're going to work here. Even though you may not need that degree to do the thing that HP wants you to do, it will say on that rec, must have a 4-year degree. Okay. So that is still a good investment. I think what we haven't done is focused on really looking at it from the ROI perspective and deciding how much should I pay to go to college? Because there's a full spectrum of community college and state colleges and lesser known colleges and so forth and so on. So there's a whole spectrum. There is a college, there's a higher education experience for just about anybody who wants one. But we have to be focused on making sure we do that calculus so that we don't wind up in this debt and we don't wind up servicing it for the next 20 or 30. Obama said he was in the White House with student loans. Okay. So I think it worked out for him though. So I wouldn't say it wasn't working, but in any event, I really do think that we need to make that encouragement. We need to make sure people have resources to go, but we also need to help students make good decisions, good financial decisions about going to college.
I'm already biased, but I think you both have put it very well, and from two different lenses in terms of generations. If we took the cost of college out of the equation, I think our conversation would be very different, right? It is the cost. The cost is changing the education, and how wise the folks behind me are. Nobody should take on that kind of debt, which is what Phyllis is talking about. There's also trades. There's also other things that individuals can do, and that might be right for them. And so part of it is the coaching that happens even before you get to that time where you're trying to decide about college. What makes sense for you? And you don't, this idea that you have to go to college right out of high school is a whole nother conversation. Some people may need to mature a bit. I do believe in the community college route to the 4-year. I also believe, you have some people just have no idea. So don't have them spending, paying $60,000 and they have no clue why they're there. We can do a better job. And so I think I agree with, if you look at the job or the things you're interested in, what's the entry ticket, which is what Phyllis is talking about. And if it's a college degree, then you need to figure out a path, a responsible path. And I put in, there's 4,500 colleges in the United States. Find one that makes sense for you. And don't let anybody tell you what your path should be. And how long it should take you. Yes, there are rules in terms of how long it should take you to get out of college. But what are you rushing for? Work, grow, get your grades, and take your time. We have a lot of dynamics with, the crossing of the stage at high school and putting up the schools and where people are going. We need to stop, because most people that are CEOs of organizations didn't go to those schools. We have to stop. We just have to stop. I happen to be in an institution that works really hard to keep the cost down for students, so they can go to school and make it available to them. But we have to stop. I do find value in college because I do think it is part of, and you already said it, Davy, I'm going to mess up your name. It is part of your identity development. And you can develop it in one space or develop it in another space. We need thinkers. If you're a reader already, I hate that I would miss you coming into that space with the other students and contributing to that conversation. I hate that we miss you coming in again into the space and bringing the diversity of thoughts, life lessons into that space. It's just, when is the right time for you to join that space? And I would like to say, let's stop the push out of high school to run to college. I have so many friends that came back. They came back, right? And they were in debt. And even in that time was bad. So there is something to going to college. That's why I asked you why you stayed in Chicago. A lot of parents are shipping their kids out of Chicago. They end up coming right back home because they weren't ready to go. So I think if we were to take the cost out of the conversation, we might all still say college is worth it. But you have to be prudent. We need financial literacy in high school. So we are doing that math before we go into all that debt, and parents go into debt. The biggest boondoggle is parent loans. That's a whole, so something's wrong when parents are taking out money, that the debt they assume for their child to go to college. There's something fundamentally wrong there. So I do think college is important. It just needs to be right for the individual. You need to be ready to sit in the space. And then as a faculty member, I believe I have a responsibility to be welcoming and to create an opportunity for growth, and to be a little patient with the folks that are sitting in my classes, right? Because everybody doesn't come prepared the same way. We can have a whole conversation about that. But I do think college is important when it's your time.
Yeah, let me kind of put Bill on the spot, if he doesn't mind, and especially since he knows Thomas and Courtney.
Mhm.
But I think changing the paradigm is also something that we should strongly consider. And the whole mindset was you go to college and you go get a job. And I think there are other avenues, and both Roland and Davey kind of spoke to them. But Bill, what are some of the things that can be done from an entrepreneurship standpoint, particularly some of the things that you may be doing there at the University of Chicago?
Yeah, want to make sure I'm off mute. I think it's great to learn more about getting the exposure to entrepreneurs, earlier in life. In addition to, the financial aspect that Jacqueline mentioned as well. To allow people to understand that there are alternatives, and those alternatives may not necessarily, be things that you make a decision about when you come directly out of college. It could be that you kind of understand what an entrepreneur, type of type of career, if you will, is like. But you need to be able to work within a company and gain some experience, gain some technical skills, gain some financial skills, and then you end up later doing that, which is what happened with me. I ended up, doing more of the, entrepreneurial types of, work later in my career. And now that's what I do at the University of Chicago, helping, faculty members. But I think as part of the STEM education that exposure that we give our high school students, I think it's good to let them know that they can also build businesses. Some of them can build them before college. Some of them can build them instead of college. Some of them can build them later, as I mentioned. But it's good to have that exposure of, that is an opportunity. And so I'm also on the board of the Illinois Science and Technology Coalition and Institute, and we do that kind of STEM education or workshops and so forth. So at the university, though, I tell you, we get many of the best ideas from undergrads, freshmen and sophomores that and they don't know enough to. I think one of you said, or kind of insinuated that if you don't know enough, then you won't say no to things. You won't say that these things are impossible to accomplish. And so that's what it takes sometimes. You go in and blindly, but you have an idea that is has a market, and you hit it right. And so that's I think all of those are will be better for gaining these opportunities, and a lot of them that I see, by the way, last point I'll make is that they don't necessarily traditionally line up with strict conventional engineering disciplines. Many of them are cross-disciplinary kinds of opportunities. So you work with another person in another department, and you come up with an idea. A computer scientist works with a person in biological sciences, to come up with a medical device or some sort of medical software. And those are the things I think that we really need to stress going forward, and bringing people together. Hopefully that helps. Right? Hopefully I address the thought process.
That was great. I don't want to cut anybody off. If anyone else has any other thoughts, please go ahead and share it now. Okay.
I just want to tag in with Bill because I put something in note. I watch my son collaborate. This generation can collaborate in ways we never could. Right. And the opportunity to me at IIT, either in that space or even beyond, Bill has talked about a lot of other spaces, is just to get those collaborations together, to create spaces for individuals you know, early ID, but in a different way, for them to come together just to think, to talk, to generate ideas. Being an entrepreneur was not on my radar. Back to Raymond, it was get a job. And I think, and forgive me, folks that are younger than me, but because perhaps I know with my son, he gets a freedom I didn't have because he lives in my house and he's still here. And, you know, I said, I'll buy your shoes and those things, but he's still here. And I'm trying to get, hard as it is, I'm trying to give him that space. Because entrepreneurship is real. It is important. Adam and I sit in that space. We work with small businesses, and Bill, I think you know Adam because he does stuff with Polsky. But
sure I do.
you know, it's real. There are some real things we see with entrepreneurs that they don't understand, depending on the journey they took. The money is one, back to Ray, the money is one, right? The realities of that. But we have to figure out how to nurture this spirit. It's bigger than ours. It's bigger than ours. And they want something different. How do we all get in a room? And we just y'all gotta be willing to get in a room and listen to the old heads just a little bit. And then we listen to you so we can collaborate, because they know how to collaborate in ways faster than we ever could. There's so much opportunity there. So much opportunity there.
Well said.
Are you muted still?
I was having the best. I was about to wrap it up the best way I knew how. All right, now we'll start over. All right. I didn't think I was going to be able to hold everybody for 2 hours, but I appreciate all of you for all your. Don't make that face. I don't know. I appreciate everybody sticking around and answering these questions and giving such thoughtful answers. I hope to do more of these. So if I email you, please don't block me. Please be willing, because there were some other people who couldn't make it the date and time, but they wanted to contribute. So I think we should do more of these. I can't say thank you enough. I will share this out. And just with that, thank you for your contributions. Thank you for sharing your time and your stories, your love stories about Illinois Tech. Yeah. I look forward to working with you all again. If you have any questions for me, please let me know. Thank you so much, and everyone have a great night. Thank you.
You too. Pleasure talking with y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Very good.
We
It
have
was a
to
real
eat
pleasure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. No, it was a real pleasure seeing folks that I already knew and